My name's Topher. I'm in Lake Bottom Prime.
Yeah!
Go see that.
Which is why I look like a Mormon. And I also wrote it. And I also wrote this. And I've never read it out loud, so we'll have to turn it.
No shame!
That's right.
So my friend Alana has these fits of inspiration where she decorates for random holidays like Arbor Day and Secretary's Day, stuff like that, because she figures why should Halloween and Christmas have all the fun, right? And if the inspiration hits on a day that isn't a national holiday, she just goes online, looks up this date in history, and goes from there. It's fun, and we get all these weird traditions out of it, like we all donate coats to the homeless shelter on the anniversary of William Henry Harrison's death, because he was the president who didn't wear a coat at his inauguration, got pneumonia, and died a month later. It may seem strange, but I'm sure carving a pumpkin would seem bizarre to someone not familiar with Halloween, or just try explaining the crap we do on Easter to a Muslim. Anyhow, it was Vicki Lawrence's birthday, which I didn't know, but Alana did, thank you Google, and she was painting the cast of Mama's Family on the front windows of her house. The later seasons with Bubba, not the earlier ones with Betty White. She said Betty White was too hard to paint, and who am I to argue? I never tried. But just as Alana was finishing the floral pattern on Naomi's off-the-shoulder blouse, she fell off the ladder. Called me in agony, thinking her leg was broken, asked me to take her to the ER, which I agreed to do on the condition that I got to be the one to tell the nurses how she'd broken her leg. So while we were waiting to get her leg set, she asked me to find her a grape soda. Nothing else would do. Maybe that's the traditional beverage on Vicki Lawrence's birthday. And I finally found a machine that had them after like a half-hour looking. It wouldn't take my dollar. I kept smoothing it on the front of the Coke machine, it kept spitting it out. I knew Alana well enough to know that if I didn't return with the grape soda, that, not the broken leg, would be the worst thing that happened to her all day. So this guy behind me says, need some change, and he bumped me 50 cents, and I got the soda, and he and I started chatting. His name was Harry, which was kind of classic and old school. You don't really see that one much anymore. Harry was visiting his boss, who just had triplets. She's 47. Gross, right? Yeah. She'd had in vitro, of course, which I think is getting a little out of hand lately. Like that lady in California who had 8. Humans are not meant to birth by a litter. If they were, women would have 6 breasts.
Yeah!
I am digressing. So, after Harry went downstairs with me to deliver Alana's grape soda, he asked me out on a date, and that is how I met my boyfriend. Yeah, all that set up to tell you how we met, but if I just said we met when he bummed me change at the vending machine, you wouldn't appreciate the richness of that moment. And that is why, to this day, Valentine's Day doesn't mean shit to me, but Vicki Lawrence's birthday is filled with possibility.
Yeah!
The next year on Vicki Lawrence's birthday, Harry gave me a card with 2 quarters taped inside. He'd meticulously painted George Washington on both of them to look like Mama from Mama's Family, so that the next time Alana injured herself, then I'd have change to buy her a grape soda. Clever. I gave him the complete set of Nightmare on Elm Street movies, including Freddy vs. Jason, which is not technically considered part of the canon, but it's got Kelly Rowland from Destiny's Child in it, which is fun. See, I found out very quickly that Harry had a thing for horror flicks, and he had absolutely no standards whatsoever. It could be the goriest piece of shit ever filmed, and he still would have seen it 8 times. He told me he liked to see if they could still scare him, and when they did, which was rare, it was a really gratifying experience. They all scared me. Dark Crystal still scares the hell out of me. I don't stand a chance with horror movies, but he didn't drink much or smoke, he always smelled good, so if this was his vice, I could totally handle that. The horror movies were not a problem. Walter was a problem. Walter was Harry's parrot. He got Walter for Christmas when he was 12 after begging for it for years, but he wasn't properly warned about the dangers of parrot ownership. Namely, that they live forever. And they get progressively more antisocial with every passing year. So now Walter is 19 and the embodiment of evil. Harry had this sort of weary affection mixed with obligation towards Walter I'd only seen in people forced to care for their aging parents. He'd endure the attacks, and we'd all try to tread lightly whenever we walked to the back bedroom where he sat seething all day. As soon as you walked in the room, he'd attack the sides of the cage with these manic fits of rage. I always felt like Clarice Starling heading down the corridor to see Hannibal Lecter. You know, when all the guys are screaming at her and that guy says he can smell her. Well, if you don't know, Walter didn't talk anymore, not because he lost the ability, just because he was pissy and didn't feel like communicating. But after 19 years of Harry's horror movie addiction, Walter could, pitch perfect, replicate the screams of a teenage girl. You would swear a scantily clad cheerleader was being set on fire. The neighbors would hear this. The police came more than once. It was really awkward. People told him the bird should be put down, which I don't even know if you can do. I mean, cats you put down, dogs you put down, arthritic golden retrievers, but a dead bird is technically food. So I don't know if anyone goes to the trouble of euthanizing them. But Harry loved the bird, and for the people and things we love, we deal with the baggage, you know? And even when they go crazy, even when they make your landlord think you're torturing Jamie Lee Curtis, Walter was his to care for, and we fully expected that little nightmare to outlive us both. We were almost right. He came very close to outliving Harry. There was an accident on the interstate. Harry and two other cars. I wish I had more of a setup for that one, but I don't. It was awful, and I don't like to think about what it looked like. But nobody knew to call me. Neither of us had ever been in the hospital, so there was no emergency contact for me or anything. His mother didn't have my number, because why would she? So I didn't know for 2 hours. His boss, the one with the triplets, she was the one who called me after hearing from his sister. And I was at the vet with the damn bird because he'd been screaming more than usual, and we wanted to see if there was a way to sedate him. There wasn't. So I'm flying down the road with the bird in the back of my car, trying to get to the hospital, not the same one we met at, although the next time I tell this story it will be. And I get to the toll booth. I have no money. There's a line of cars behind me and cops just ahead, and time is wasting, and I think Harry's dying. And I didn't know if we were meant to be together forever, but I sure as hell felt we'd have longer than this. And why didn't anyone who mattered know that I mattered enough to call? And that's when Walter started to scream. So I started to scream. And the two of us sat in that damn car screaming at the top of our lungs, competing at first, but then finding sort of a harmony. People were honking and staring, and I could not have cared less. Walter was fucking right. This was a moment to scream. And it calmed me down. Enough to remember the card with Vicki Lawrence's portrait on 2 quarters was still in my glove compartment. So I tossed it in, and for the second time in my life, I thanked God for Vicki Lawrence. I got to the hospital, and it was a hot day, and I didn't want to cook the damn bird in the car, so we brought it in. Harry was all beat up. He looked like the surviving virgin at the end of a horror movie. I stood there, cage in hand, and said, "We were so worried." That day was the last time Walter screamed. It turns out that mean old son of a bitch just needed to find a sympathetic ear. And in the moment that a sympathetic ear was exactly what I needed, Walter was there, giving me permission to let it all out.